Hello, everybody, and welcome to B2B Talks number 9. We don't want to put the fake clapping in the background, so it would be good if you will cooperate. So first of all, I heard the traffic was horrendous, so thank you everyone that actually managed to arrive. Okay, I believe that we will have a drop of a small amount of people coming in during the event itself. We started to do B2B talks because we saw that there are a lot of very smart B2B marketers that are actually don't have a forum to share the knowledge with others. That was point number 1. Point number 2 was that there is a way to get free beer. So the connection between the two created this event. First of all, I want to start by thanking our partners. The guys from Trendyman, please raise your hands. Woo! Trendyman is an awesome marketing technology platform. They are supporting these events for several times already. Feel free to talk with them after the event. Awesome guys and awesome product that we also use for our own marketing efforts. Our second partner are Medak Knessim. Woo! As you know, last year we were involved in several B2B marketing events in Israel, done by Medak Knessim. They were kind enough to offer us to support them with content, and they were kind enough to offer us to support us with this event as well. So thank you very much, guys. Okay. Today, we're going to talk about innovation. The thing is, B2B is usually considered as boring to boring. Let's do several events. We'll have MQLs. We'll send it to sales. Sales will not look at them, and the world goes on. We've created this event to get some spice into B2B marketing. And we're doing it in 2 ways. First of all, we're starting with an interview with Inbal Arieli. She knows me when I was like 20 years ago, something like, yeah, a bit more. So she has tons of extremely embarrassing stories. And then we'll go to a panel with Tomer Zucker from IBM. Rafik Kretschmer from Panaya. Where is he? And David Geffen from NICE. Okay, so as we said, we know for a very long time, but tell me a bit about what you're doing today.
Thanks, Fear. So hi, good evening, everyone. Very happy to be here. I'm usually not invited to be a professional speaker at marketing events, and that's just because I'm not from the marketing angle. Okay, I'm more in the doing than in the telling, and I really appreciate and value the art of telling. So kudos to you all, and I have a lot to learn for you. Since we've met 20 plus years ago, I've developed my career in the Israeli high tech. Started as a general counsel, as a legal lawyer. Boring to boring, but actually provided me with a great skill set of knowledge, experience, and tools relevant to the business world. And in the past 10 years, and I had the privilege to work with some of Israel's most amazing entrepreneurs. The Veritimer family, Sami Segol with Keta, Dov Moran with Modu, really by luck, but amazing people to learn from. And in the past 7 years plus, I've been creating supportive vehicles, mostly for early stage startups here in Israel, but not only. And currently holding a position in an organization called Startup Nation Central, which is a nonprofit organization bridging between world-leading organizations, business and government, and the Israeli ecosystem. I'm leaving Startup Nation Central You're actually the first audience to whom I'm saying that formally to the camera. Yeah. And I'm actually doing that to focus on a book I'm writing about the Israeli roots of entrepreneurship. If we have time, we can touch also upon that. I live in Tel Aviv. I'm 41 years old, and I have 3 very active boys and a dog.
Okay, so you've mentioned through all the parts of your career, one company that it really depends how you look at the story of this company, and I'm talking about Modu, right? Dov Moran, those who don't know the story, Dov Moran, after huge success in the industry, started a new company, and now the narrative depends on the teller, right? Some would say, oops, some would say, wow, okay? So tell us a bit more about how, in the context of innovation, how do you see Modu?
So Dov sold M Systems at the end of 2006 and immediately thought of starting Modu. Again, I was lucky and I had the privilege to meet him at that time specifically and invited to join the core team, the founding team, if you want, of his new adventure. Modu started with huge hopes, and it was an amazing promise. M Systems was one of the biggest transactions in Israeli high-tech ever, still to date, $1.7 billion. And Dov was, you know, at the peak of wherever you can be. Before the iPhone, remember? Nobody had iPhones, it didn't exist. We all had those either Blackberries or the Nokias. Simple phones. And Dov came with a promise to change the telecommunication world, the way we use phones. Within a year, we raised $120 million. We grew from a group of 3-4 people to more than 80. We opened 5 subsidiaries around the world. Dov was quoted all over the press saying that the next Nokia, which was huge then, okay, will be set here in Israel. The press covered the visit of the company to the World Mobile Conference, where we kind of attacked the visitors with Tic Tacs and made a lot of noise talking about marketing, by the way, and efficient marketing. And really, it was all over. It was a huge, huge promise. Obviously, something happened. Okay, because fast forward 3 years, not even 3 years, Modu closed. And those 300 employees that were eventually part of this amazing adventure found themselves in other places. And we all know history. The iPhone came out in late 2007, completely changed the world of telecommunication. And Modu was not agile enough, was not flexible enough to adapt and change its go-to-market strategy. So back to your question now, was it a success or a failure? Both. In my opinion, it was definitely a huge success. I always say that those $120 million were probably the highest stipend that someone gave to 300 people who went through an amazing business school, okay? Probably better than Harvard, in my opinion. But here are some facts. So first, the IP, the intellectual property of Modu, was sold. It was sold to Google. It was sold to Google, and today, we're in 2017, 7 years after the company was closed, this intellectual property is the basis of the Ara project, the modular phone by Google. So that, you might say, is a first small success. But actually, the bigger success is that 32 startups were actually initiated by people who worked at Modu, who were part of that big failure. But when Modu closed, decided that not only they're not looking for something more secure, they're actually starting their own startups. So 32 new startups, out of which, by the way, some were already acquired. Onavu, which was acquired by Facebook, is one of those. Others are still growing. Mintigo, Interlude, okay, and other examples. Some obviously closed. But a lot of activity, a lot of innovation was actually generated by people who were part of that experience. And that, in my opinion, is definitely a success.
Okay, so when we're talking about innovation, it usually means do something that other people didn't do before, right? And then there is a risk of failure. So I just want to ask some people here, by show of hands, how many of you completely failed in the past, in their past? Work-related, personal-related, I mean like, as we say in Hebrew, on the face, okay? Like completely fail. No, okay. All entrepreneurs over there. Tomer, I will grill you later. Okay. Okay, the reason I want to talk about failures specifically is because according to some of the research we've done, this is one of the biggest differentiators between societies that manage to innovate and societies that do not manage to do that. So can you give us like a little glimpse into that?
Sure, yeah, so I'm fascinated by the courage that entrepreneurs have to try. Let's start with that. Statistics all over the world are the same. If you take Israel and Silicon Valley and other places in the world, statistics talk about 90% of failure and maximum 10% of success. And that doesn't change from one place to the other. What does change are two things. A, what is the pie? How many are trying? Okay, so what is the 100%? And the second thing, how open are people to talk about their failures, to refer to their failures as failures. The fact that you even ask that question is one thing. The fact that people even answered it is another thing that in other, even ecosystem of entrepreneurship around the world would not happen. Okay? Even the question by itself is kind of rude. Why would I tell you about my failures? Okay? So statistically, we're probably like other places in the world. But the fact is that here we're really more open to talk about it. And let me give you some cultural examples. First is the definition of failure. So I went and checked, and the Oxford Dictionary defines failure as a lack of success. So it's binary, success or failure. When you go to the Hebrew dictionary, Evan Shushan dictionary, the definition is that long, okay? And it's so gray. It's an attempt to do something, a trial. It's really much broader than just not succeeding in doing. And that's our language, okay? But language has a lot of importance in terms of our culture. Then I looked in more places, and I was thinking of my kids. I have 3 boys, as I told you. Thinking of some, I know by looking at you that there are some parents here in the audience. Think of the story of the Maaseh b'chamisha balonim, of the 5 balloons. And think of the tragedy that's happening in that story, okay? The kids are playing with balloons, but all the balloons keep exploding, and it's like repetitive, right? It's one balloon after the other, that flies to the sky.
Completely zen ending, right?
Exactly.
Flies to the sky.
Right, and it's a whole tragedy for kids. Now, for those of you who have small kids, it's a tragedy that a balloon explodes. But the message of the story is, if you remember, לא נורא רון ירון, זה סופו של כל בלון. So although we know that's how it's supposed to be, the kids and us as parents keep letting them play with that. Or for those of you who are a little more experienced in life, like we are, Jacek from Zeuze. How many of you know him, remember him? Okay, who remembers Jacek's tagline? What did... Perfect. תמיד נופל וקם. He always falls and get back. Now, think of those in the 80s, one channel, 100% of rating. Everybody used to look at that show, okay? Teenagers, kids. And the message of Jacek was, kids, ילדים לא לדאוג לעולם. Kids never worry. Jacek always falls and gets back. And that's a repetitive message. Now, nobody really thought strategically of educating kids towards failure, okay? We're not that long-term thinking, right? But it's in our culture. And this is exactly those cultural components that I think differ Israel from other places around the world, and it's definitely relevant to innovation and to entrepreneurship.
Okay, before we finish this part of the event, first of all, what I've learned from the story about the balloons, always take the red balloon. Okay, but all the people here are looking for tips how to create innovative organization, innovative teams, innovative way of thinking, because innovation is culture. It's not only a process, it's a cultural aspect. What are your tips for people here that are running marketing organization on how to create an actual innovative and innovation-based culture in their companies?
So I think that if you're working in Israel and you are based on human capital, Israeli human capital, you have 90% of the equation already in your favor. Because as I said, we're brought to think innovatively, and that's great. And the only question is, how do we create the right environment for this mindset, which is natural to us, to actually, come to the ground? And I think the most important tip I can give is not what to do, but actually what not to do. And from all my experience in bigger organizations and smaller startups and bigger corporates, is we're sometimes so busy with the day-to-day goals and tasks that we have. I'm thinking of management meetings, for example. In all of the organizations, I was part of the executive team. Usually, it's just getting together around a table and updating. Okay? Each executive is updating the others and sharing information about what's going on. It's very rarely a conversation, a discussion, a brainstorming where we are all free to think and to brainstorm together, although the brain power is in the room. So what I try to do, at least with the teams that I'm involved in, is to create some kind of mechanism and say, for example, let's update, but always let's have time which is secured to raise the bottlenecks. Okay, what are the two bottlenecks that each executive, each responsible, each leader, each person on the team has? Raise the problem and make sure to leave enough time to discuss it together, because most probably the answers would be around the table. You just need to be minded and free of chasing everyday's tasks, to let it go on the surface. And the brain power is there, the innovative power is all there. Let's just, free the table to create the conversation.
Thanks a lot for sharing your knowledge and experience in this area. So thank you very much. Important.